Every morning, 72-year-old Irene sips her coffee, grabs her pencil and opens the crossword section, thinking she's keeping her brain sharp. But what if that simple ritual is doing the opposite? But according to top neurologists, a specific kind of brain activity, like repetitive word puzzles, may actually accelerate cognitive decline in older adults. In this video, we'll uncover why your daily crossword might be a silent risk to your brain, and what neuroscientists now recommend instead to keep your mind truly young, alert, and resilient. Irene always believed it was helping, one puzzle a day to keep dementia away. But that's what she'd been told. And for decades she followed the advice religiously, but beneath the harmless squares and clever clues, there's a neurological truth that many seniors, and even some doctors, don't fully understand. The truth is this: not all mental activity is protective, and some may actually lure your brain into a dangerous state of false security. But Emily Barnes, a neurologist who spent over 20 years researching cognitive decline, recently warned that repetitive brain games like crosswords and word searches might not challenge the brain enough to stimulate growth. But in her own words, the brain is like a muscle, it only grows when it's pushed beyond its comfort zone. Doing the same type of puzzle every day, that's the mental equivalent of walking the same mile at the same pace forever. You're moving but not progressing. It's called the familiarity trap. Crosswords, Sudoku, even word scrambles can feel stimulating, but they often activate the same neural circuits repeatedly, offering little to no new stimulation. But in early-stage dementia studies, patients who relied solely on such puzzles often showed no slowing of cognitive decline. In fact, some experienced faster memory deterioration than peers who engaged in more adaptive, varied activities. But one study from the University of Michigan tested over 200 adults aged 65 and older. Half did daily puzzles. The other half learned new skills like digital photography or speaking a new language. But after 6 months, the group learning new things showed significant improvement in memory, attention span, and problem-solving ability. The puzzle group, flat performance, no improvement. But no delay in decline. But why? Because the brain craves novelty. It's wired to grow when exposed to challenge, unpredictability, and creative problem solving. But crosswords, though enjoyable, become routine, and routine is the enemy of neuroplasticity. But here's where it gets even more concerning. Repetitive mental tasks can create a sense of control and calm, which feels good, but may mask early warning signs of memory decline. But by the time you notice you're struggling to recall names or misplacing keys more often, those cognitive patterns could already be deeply set. But this doesn't mean you should throw away your puzzles. But the key is balance. But the danger isn't in the crossword itself, it's in making it your only form of mental stimulation, like eating only one food group and calling it a healthy diet. So what should you do instead? In the next section, we'll explore exactly what neurologists now recommend. But brain exercises that actually rewire your memory, boost cognition, and protect against aging-related decline, and most importantly. But we'll show you how to make these habits part of your daily routine without giving up what you love. But the human brain is a survival machine. But it adapts, rewires, and reshapes itself even in old age, if given the right environment. While repetitive games may feel safe, neurologists now agree real brain protection comes from discomfort, from effort, from surprise. But, so what does that mean for you? It means you don't need complicated apps or expensive brain training software. But you need 3 daily habits that neurologists say can keep your mind sharper longer and possibly delay or prevent dementia altogether. But first, learn something completely unfamiliar. This is called cognitive stretching, and it's the opposite of comfort. But in one study published in Psychological Science. But seniors who took up digital photography or quilting skills they had never practiced before showed noticeable increases in memory and executive function within just 3 months. Meanwhile, but seniors who simply socialized or did familiar activities showed little to no improvement. Why does this work? Because when you force your brain to process new patterns, new instructions, or new muscle memory pathways, you activate dormant neural networks. It's like switching on backup systems. But the more unfamiliar the task, the more your brain is forced to grow. So instead of another crossword, try something like learning a few phrases in a new language, mastering a basic song on a piano, or even experimenting with photography apps on your phone. The goal is not perfection, it's neural confusion, the good kind. But second, move your body in new ways. Yes, your brain needs physical movement, especially movements that require balance, coordination, and rhythm. But studies from Harvard Medical School found that seniors who took up dance, yes, dance, showed significant improvement in both short-term memory and spatial awareness. But why? Because dancing combines music, motion, and pattern recognition all at once. But it forces your brain to multitask and adapt in real time. Even something as simple as learning Tai Chi, yoga, or a short series of balance exercises can strengthen the connection between your brain and body, reducing fall risk and keeping cognitive pathways active. But third, challenge your attention span. Here's a surprising fact: multitasking can accelerate cognitive fatigue. Your brain isn't wired to juggle everything at once, especially not in older age. But instead, neurologists recommend practicing focused attention. One method is deep reading. But set aside 20 minutes a day to read a challenging book, fiction or non-fiction, and stay with it. No phone, no notifications, no quick scrolling, just one story, one idea, one mental thread. fMRI studies show that focused attention activates the prefrontal cortex, strengthens long-term memory circuits, and protects emotional regulation, a key factor in Alzheimer's prevention. But these three habits, learning new skills, moving in unfamiliar ways, and practicing deep focus, are more effective than any crossword or app. They don't just entertain your brain, they train it. But if you've already spent years doing the wrong kinds of brain exercises, is it too late to reverse the damage? But in the next section, we'll look at the early warning signs neurologists are now tracking, and the brain's shocking ability to bounce back when given the right fuel. It doesn't always start with forgetting your grandson's name or misplacing your car keys. The brain whispers long before it screams, and those whispers, they often go unnoticed until it's too late. But neurologists now refer to this phase as cognitive pre-fatigue. The subtle signals your brain sends when it's struggling, but hasn't yet reached full cognitive decline. These aren't the dramatic signs we associate with dementia. These are quieter, slipperier, but just as important, one of the first signs, decision fatigue. But have you found yourself struggling to choose what to eat for dinner, or staring at a grocery shelf overwhelmed by options? That's not just indecision. It's a breakdown in the brain's executive function. According to researchers at the Mayo Clinic, when the frontal lobe, the brain's decision-making center, begins to weaken, even simple choices become exhausting, and instead of noticing, but we brush it off as being tired. But next there's the repetition trap. You watch the same shows, you cook the same meals, but you talk about the same topics, not because you want to, but because it's easier. This behavioral loop is a red flag. In brain imaging studies, people who gravitate toward familiar routines are often doing so because their brains are conserving energy. But conserving energy over time means fewer neural connections, less novelty, more decay. But then there's the one most people miss entirely: emotional flatness, a gradual loss of interest in things you used to love, gardening, reading, music, social visits. It's not just a bad mood, it's your brain telling you that the reward system, those circuits that light up with joy and motivation, aren't firing the way they used to. In fact, but depression and apathy are now considered early warning signs of dementia, especially in people over 65. But perhaps the most insidious symptom, overconfidence. But strange, but in early cognitive decline, the brain often creates a false sense of certainty. You're sure you've taken your pills. Sure you locked the door. Sure you called someone back when in reality you didn't. This false certainty is called anosognosia. and it tricks you into believing everything is fine, while decline is quietly setting in. But the scariest part, most seniors experiencing these symptoms aren't aware of them, or they dismiss them as normal aging. But neurologists are urging people to look closer. But because the earlier you catch the signs, the more you can do to protect your brain. But here's the good news. Just because the brain is tired doesn't mean it's broken. In fact, the brain is one of the most resilient organs in the body, capable of healing, rewiring, and even regrowing damaged connections, if given the right inputs. But so, how do you start that healing process in the next section? We'll reveal the 4 science-backed brain fuels, nutrients, and practices that don't just protect your memory, they help restore it. But your brain is made of just 2% of your total body weight, but it uses over 20% of your body's energy. But in every thought, every memory, every spark of clarity you experience is powered by a delicate supply chain of nutrients, oxygen, and chemical messengers. But, so when memory starts to fade or focus becomes foggy, it's not always about age, it's about fuel. And the truth, most seniors are unknowingly starving their brains. But neurologists have identified 4 critical sources of brain fuel, and missing even one can accelerate decline. But first, omega-3 fatty acids, specifically DHA and EPA, essential fats that form the structural foundation of brain cells. But in fact, over 60% of your brain is fat, and DHA makes up a huge portion of the gray matter where memory and learning happen. Studies from the University of Oxford show that seniors with higher DHA levels have better memory, faster processing speeds, and significantly lower risk of Alzheimer's disease. The best source is fatty fish like wild salmon, sardines, or mackerel. But if fish isn't your thing, a high-quality fish oil supplement, at least 1,000 milligrams of combined EPA and DHA, can make a measurable difference in cognitive function within 90 days. But second, rich foods. But your brain is constantly under attack from oxidative stress, tiny molecules called free radicals that damage cells over time. And guess which part of the body is the most sensitive? That's right, the brain. That's why antioxidants are so essential. But berries, especially blueberries, are packed with compounds called anthocyanins that cross the blood-brain barrier and directly reduce inflammation in the hippocampus, the brain's memory center. But in a landmark study published in the Annals of Neurology, women who ate berries at least twice a week delayed cognitive aging by up to 2.5 years compared to those who didn't. But third, be vitamin of B6, B12, and folate as your brain's maintenance crew. They remove toxins called homocysteine that, if left unchecked, can shrink your brain tissue. But that's not a metaphor, it's literal shrinkage. But in MRI studies, seniors deficient in B12 showed accelerated brain atrophy, even before they noticed symptoms. Foods rich in B vitamins include leafy greens, eggs, liver, and whole grains. But for those over 60, supplementation is often necessary because absorption declines with age. A simple B-complex vitamin daily can fill the gap. Fourth, oxygen through movement. It sounds simple, but most people forget that your brain's most important fuel, oxygen, is delivered through movement. A sedentary lifestyle chokes off that supply. But just 20 minutes of walking a day increases blood flow to key areas like the prefrontal cortex and hippocampus, both responsible for memory, attention, and decision-making. Researchers at the University of British Columbia found that seniors who walked briskly 3 times a week had noticeable growth in the hippocampus, a region that typically shrinks with age. This isn't magic, it's science, real food, real movement, real results. And yet, even with the right fuel, even with the right exercises, many seniors still feel stuck, like they're doing all the right things, but their mind still feels heavy, still feels tired. But what's missing in the next section? We'll explore the brain's emotional triggers, the hidden thoughts and habits that silently sabotage your memory, and how to flip the switch from decline to renewal. But you can eat the right foods, you can take your supplements, you can walk every day and challenge your brain, but if your mind is living in a constant state of tension, anxiety, or emotional fatigue, But all of that effort may only scratch the surface. But because stress, especially the kind that builds slowly over time, is not just a feeling, it's a biochemical weapon against your brain. But every time you feel overwhelmed, worried, or trapped in rumination, your body releases cortisol, the stress hormone. But in small doses, cortisol is helpful, but chronic cortisol exposure is different. It's toxic, and the part of your brain it targets first, the hippocampus, the very region responsible for memory, learning, but emotion regulation. In brain scans, patients with high stress levels show measurable shrinkage of the hippocampus, sometimes equivalent to several years of aging, and the worst part, you may not even realize it's happening, but the signs are subtle at first. You read the same paragraph, but can't recall what it said. You walk into a room and forget why you're there. You fumble for words you've known your entire life. But most people blame age, but neurologists warn this is often stress at work, not time. But one Harvard Medical School study followed over 400 older adults for 8 years and found that those with high chronic stress had twice the rate of cognitive impairment even when diet, activity, and sleep were controlled for. Let that sink in. The mental wear and tear of unmanaged emotion can outpace physical factors entirely, but there's more to it than just cortisol. Negative self-talk, those quiet corrosive thoughts like, I'm getting old, I'm slowing down, maybe I'm just not sharp anymore, also rewire the brain. But every repeated thought forms a neural groove, and the more you repeat it, the deeper it gets. This is called neuroplastic imprinting. But it means your thoughts are not just reactions. They're building the very structure of your brain. But here's the power in that. But if repeated fear can build decline, repeated confidence can build resilience, in fact. But a Yale University study found that seniors who held positive beliefs about aging lived an average of 7.5 years longer than those with negative beliefs. But not because of vitamins or better habits, but because of mindset. Optimism didn't just make life more enjoyable. It made the brain more resilient. But so, what can you do? You start by noticing the stress loops, the hidden anxieties, the quiet self-doubt. Then you replace them. But one powerful tool, guided daily affirmations and mental rehearsals, short visualizations where you picture yourself focused, sharp, and energized. But this isn't wishful thinking, it's mental training. And over time it rewires the emotional core of the brain. In the next section, we'll give you a 5-minute daily brain ritual. But neurologists now recommend a simple yet powerful practice that combines movement, memory, and emotion to reawaken your cognitive strength. Imagine this, it's early morning. The house is still. You're sitting upright in a chair. But no phone, no distractions, just your breath, your body, and your mind. This isn't meditation. It isn't a crossword. It's something neurologists are now calling a cognitive integration ritual, a 5-minute routine designed to synchronize your physical body, emotional state, but then memory centers all at once. In multiple studies, including those from Stanford and Johns Hopkins, seniors who practice this type of intentional multi-sensory ritual improve their working memory, reaction speed, but an even sleep quality within just a few weeks. So, how does it work? It's built on 3 pillars: oxygenation, activation, and visualization. Let's break it down. Step 1, controlled breath. But start with what's called box breathing. Inhale through your nose for a count of 4, hold for 4, exhale through your mouth for 4, and hold again for 4. Repeat this cycle 3 to 5 times. Studies show that this technique immediately lowers cortisol, increases oxygen to the brain, and primes your nervous system for learning. But step 2, brain-body priming. While seated, begin tapping your left hand gently on your right knee and your right hand on your left knee, alternating slowly. But this cross-lateral movement activates both hemispheres of your brain and enhances communication between memory centers and motor function. It may feel silly at first, but it's backed by neuroscience. Just 60 seconds of this can improve focus and bilateral brain activity, especially in older adults. But step 3, mental rehearsal. Now close your eyes and imagine yourself clearly and vividly going through a mentally sharp day. See yourself remembering names, walking confidently, engaging in a deep conversation. But picture it as if it's already happening, not in the future, but now. But this activates what neurologists call the default mode network, a set of brain regions that governs perception, planning, and internal dialogue. When stimulated correctly, it reprograms your identity around clarity, confidence, and focus. This alone can reverse the emotional spiral caused by forgetfulness and fatigue. But do this for just 5 minutes. No apps, no timers, just you, your breath, your body, and your imagination. Lisa Feldman, a cognitive neuroscientist at Northeastern University, explains it simply: the brain doesn't know the difference between actual experience and vivid imagination. But if you rehearse sharpness, your brain believes it and starts building the pathways to make it real. But even better, this ritual doesn't just protect your memory, it creates momentum, a feeling of agency, a sense that you're not just aging passively, you're training. And when paired with the right habits, but nutrition, movement, novel learning, it becomes the cornerstone of a cognitive renewal lifestyle. But what if you feel like it's too late, that the decline is already begun? In the next section, we'll share the story of a woman who reversed her memory loss after 80 and the exact roadmap neurologists gave her to do it. Her name was Marjorie, 82 years old, retired teacher, sharp her whole life, but lately, something had changed. But she'd walk into a room and forget why. She'd repeat questions she'd asked minutes earlier. And one day, she opened a book she'd read dozens of times and couldn't remember the plot. Her doctor called it normal aging, but Marjorie didn't buy it. "But I taught for 40 years, she said. "I know the difference between being tired and losing yourself." She feared what many seniors silently dread, that this was the beginning of the end, that one day her mind would slip too far to find its way back. But then she met Vanessa Moore, a neurologist specializing in cognitive decline at the University of Chicago, and Moore didn't offer Marjorie a pill, but she offered her a plan, not a miracle cure, not a high-tech device, but a 7-day brain renewal protocol rooted in the same science we've just shared with you. But here's what it looked like. Day 1, Marjorie began her 5-minute ritual each morning, breathing, bilateral movement, and visualization. But she said it felt ridiculous at first. But afterward she noticed something surprising. She didn't feel as foggy. But day 2, she swapped her crossword for a simple puzzle game that required logic and learning a new set of rules. It was frustrating, but it lit up her brain in a new way. She said it felt like waking up. But day 3, she walked just around her block, but she focused on feeling her steps, noticing the houses, engaging her senses. "My memory came alive when I used my eyes," she later wrote. Day 4. She added omega-3s to her breakfast and swapped evening snacks for blueberries and walnuts. She wasn't dieting, she was feeding her brain. But day 5, she stopped scrolling on her phone at night. Instead, she read a chapter of a book that challenged her. She said her dreams became more vivid, her sleep deeper. But day 6, something clicked. She remembered an old friend's birthday without a reminder, a small win, but to Marjorie it was everything. Day 7, she cried, not from sadness, but from relief. "But I didn't feel broken anymore," she told Moore. "I felt like me again." In her next appointment, But Moore ran standard memory assessments, and to her surprise, Marjorie's scores had improved, not just stabilized, improved. The story made its way into a published case study on neuroplastic recovery in late-stage seniors, because what happened with Marjorie wasn't magic. It was momentum. And it started with a decision to take back control 5 minutes at a time. But now you may not be Marjorie, but you have a brain that's listening, responding, evolving, even now. In the final section, we'll bring everything together, a step-by-step recap of what to start and how to create your own brain renewal plan starting tonight. But if you've made it this far, something inside you already knows. This isn't just about crosswords, it's about your mind, your memory, your freedom to think clearly, speak confidently, live independently. But so let's make this simple. But if you want to protect your brain starting tonight, here's what to do first. Recognize the trap, the comfort of routine, the false security of repetition. That daily crossword, while familiar, isn't enough. Your brain needs novelty. It needs resistance, like a muscle that only grows when pushed. So tomorrow morning, instead of starting with another clue across or down, choose discomfort. Choose something that feels slightly out of reach. That's how the brain grows. But second, feed your mind what it truly craves. Omega-3s from wild caught fish or supplements, antioxidants from berries, greens, and turmeric, B vitamins to protect the memory centers, water, oxygen, sleep. But these aren't extras. These are fuel lines to your cognition. Without them, you're asking your brain to perform on an empty tank. But third, rewire your stress response. Catch yourself in the thought loops. I'm slowing down, I'm forgetting more, maybe it's just old age. And then flip them. But train your mind to say, my brain is changing, but I'm still in charge. But stress is not just emotional, it's chemical. Every moment you choose calm over chaos, you protect your neurons from degeneration. But fourth, ritualize your care. 5 minutes a day. That's all it takes. The breath, the crossbody movement, the mental rehearsal. This is your brain's wake-up call. No phone needed. No doctor's appointment, just you in a chair, and the decision to reclaim your mind. And fifth, move, walk, dance, stretch, flow. But movement isn't just for the body. It's medicine for the brain. When you move with intention, you pump blood into forgotten corners of your mind. You reactivate focus, balance, and memory all at once. And here's what happens when you do all of this consistently, even imperfectly. You start remembering things you thought you lost. But you wake up with energy instead of fog. You feel more yourself, not the version that's slipping, but the version that's returning. And most of all, you stop living in fear of forgetting, because you're no longer passive. You're no longer just hoping for a better brain. You're building it one breath at a time, one habit at a time, but one day at a time.